And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to this live broadcast of the Tuesday Telecast. This is my friend, Dr. Janice Campbell, and we're going to just have a conversation about what it is that happens in the spaces in between in the medical and healing realm. So I hope that you'll stick in for the whole conversation. Please, I am managing this studio kind of by myself, but I'll try to see your comments. So if you leave comments, we'll see what we can do to answer questions and respond. Anyway, hi Janice, welcome.
Hi, Lydia. How are you?
Well, it's been an interesting morning on StreamYard. I don't know as it was StreamYard's fault, but links are just disappearing in the ether.
We got here eventually, and it's only a minute or two to spare, so we're good.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the fact that there's a lot of what people think is medical fact, and what that is different kind of for everybody that's out there.
Mhm.
But there's a body of evidence that we all put some faith into, and it's studies, and there are a lot of studies out there that are based on actual documentation. And when we have this documentation, it's based on what started the what started the study in the first place, which usually has to do with some history, um, and we'll study a specific thing. So we might study what is out there in the ways of healing a certain disease, and we'll study what the protocol has been for that disease and how it was implemented and how it was implemented differently in something else. And then we say, hey, this is a thing that works for this disease, or this is a thing that doesn't work for this disease. And I see Aaron Gibson calling in from Calgary in Alberta, Canada. Hello, my northern friend. And so when we have other types of medical things, though, and I come across them, we don't necessarily have that body of evidence. There's some evidence when we say that, oh, well, certain herbs work because there they are and we can see them work. But when it's something like a way of healing that somebody has done, it's a miracle. It doesn't, there's no, it's a miracle. It's not real. It's just a, so,
Well,
what you think about this?
I mean, there's several things I just want to add into the conversation to begin with. One, I'm a doctor of acupuncture and herbal medicine. I also have somatic touch training, and I'm also a distance mind-body integration specialist. So when you see doctor in the pile of letters after my name, that's what those mean.
That's why I took mine out, because I'm a doctor of music, so what's
right. Right. Well, and I always forget to change my name depending on my audience. So anyway, but the ADS is also acupuncture detox specialist. So, so just to get that out of the way in case if people want to know from what angle I'm talking about things. The other thing to remember is, which we absolutely forget, I forget, and have to remind myself, is that any doctor, any healer, any person studying what it means to assist life to move more smoothly for people, they are in practice. That word is not chosen willy-nilly. They are practicing becoming more and more attuned to what this is, and more attuned to what helps certain people and what helps one person doesn't always help to another, etc. And when you say that there's not documentation, again, you're into the conversation of what does that mean depending on the paradigm, because there's thousands of years backing up acupuncture and herbal medicine in numerous Asian countries that's just not looked at by a lot of people. They're like, okay, but now we have to do it according to a Western paradigm with a double-blind study, or and because it's an individualized medicine, doing a double-blind, like giving the same person who may have the same symptomatology but has a different reason for why they have the symptomatology, exactly the same treatment isn't going to give you the information that you think it's going to give you. And discounting thousands of years of case studies that have come to be represented in the books of information that exist, which even then are being used to treat people that they've never been treated before. My patients were not around in ancient China. They just weren't. And so when I approach treating the person, I'm treating the person that's in front of me. And so there's a lot of pieces to this conversation, in that everybody's looking at it from through a different funnel. And that's the one of my teachers said once that any treatment, whether it is brain surgery, an acupuncture treatment, a spiritual healing session, PT, whatever it is a question. Every one of them is a question. It is a educated question to the person and the body sitting in front of you. I have seen in my practice, I have read of other people seeing in their practice this having an effect, given what I see through the paradigm that I work. And now I am asking you and your body, through prescribing this herb or putting this needle in or doing whatever it is that the practitioner does. I am asking a question: does this work for you? It's like giving somebody an aspirin for a headache. Aspirin has helped many people with headaches. Does it help you with this headache in this moment? It might have helped you with a headache last week, but it may not help you with a headache today. And then the person comes back with, yes, thank you, I feel much better, or got anything else? That did nothing, or somewhere in between. And so it's a very nuanced conversation. And then you get to the whole thing of the ahas and the miracles and the, wow, this stuff works, or this thing, I'm not sure what I fed into the situation that suddenly, poof, everything shifted. And then it becomes an even more interesting conversation. So that's just my adding to the groundwork of what we're about to talk about, because there are a lot of moving parts.
There are so many moving parts, and I love that you brought up the idea of a practice, because what we're doing right now is practicing. What we're doing in life is practicing and talking about, where the ancient people that are no longer with you, but that you're viewing, and the people that your patients are not back there in ancient China is valid. Especially when we think about, like, right now, we're present, we're talking right now, we're responding right now. So when you look at, and whatever is in front of anybody is what they're seeing. So this is a sort of like science is what we all think is medicine, but there's also this philosophy of what's going on and what you're present to at the time, and what we're seeing from studies and from let's just call it the media. Let's say, you watch NBC, you watch CBS, you listen to the BBC, you watch Fox News, you're going to get a different perspective in the moment. And as you're in a different place, we each have. The cat was just wandering through and distracting me. This is in real time, and as we're viewing that, we're seeing whatever body of evidence is being presented, and we're not, and not everybody is experts. In fact, the moment somebody says they're an expert, yeah, I question that because it can put a limit to learning. So the presence that we're with is really where I want to talk. We have herbs. People say, hey, these herbs work, and we can say that these herbs work. We have a bunch of people saying that, hey, Reiki works. It really works. And a bunch of other stuff saying, well, these studies don't show that it works as much as this allopathic medicine. And then there are the things like where somebody actually heals from something they weren't supposed to. Immediate remission from cancer.
Yep.
And there's no reason for it. And they didn't take any medicine. And people who, I use this sometimes, I grew back 3 feet of nerves. I was never supposed to walk again, right? I had no nerves in my legs whatsoever. I grew them back in a year and a half. Wasn't supposed to be possible. How does that happen? And would we have documented that ahead of time to see the progression? No, because it's an anomalous case in which medical records say that everything was hunky-dory, that it was my fault, my nerves are just weird. The original medical records said that the tourniquet had been left on too long, and then they got changed. And so be it. Sounds like a soap opera. I want to take the soap opera out of it and just say, what happens in these cases, and why don't we know what happens, and how do we figure out, how do we have a better study of this? Because this isn't normal according to the literature. And yet it is normal because people are doing this stuff every day.
Yeah, no, I get it. And sometimes it's not okay, because of the way my brain works. As you know, I have like 5 things that I want to say all at the same time.
Yeah, too.
The first one is I'm always drawn back. A good friend of mine actually years and years ago wrote his own degree in humor at Oberlin, and all of his classes were through a humor lens. So his science classes were about the physiology of laughter and et cetera, the history of laughter, the history of comedy, that kind of thing. And I'll give him credit. His name is Jordan Brown, and he writes for Scholastic books now. If anybody wants to look him up, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
At any rate, he one of the things that he told me that he had watched and he directed me towards was someone who was diagnosed with cancer and who shut himself in a hotel room for, I can't remember how many months, and did nothing but watch like Marx Brothers and other comedy things that made him laugh, and laughed for months and months and months, and slept really well because the laughter allowed him to sleep better, and went into remission. Because he was told that it was that he could either go through chemo and it wasn't going to really help. It would just prolong his life, but the chemo would make him miserable. And so he made the choice to do this instead.
Right.
So that's just another example of what you're talking about. And I think we're set up to, let me say this. Our bodies are influenced by the language that we use to describe being alive, and by the stories that we accept or don't accept about what's possible. And so being able to, I think there's a piece in here, if we're going to talk about how to study this, there's a piece in here about how much the person, it's not even belief, how much the person has an inner knowing that something is possible
I
or
think
not.
there is. I think belief might be a part of it, though, and the language is a slippery slope, but
Right.
where there are kind of two different things going on in these, or we're kind of talking about at least two areas, and let's say we go to an acupuncturist and we are open, but we don't know. We surrender. There's the knowing is with the acupuncturist, and there's the trust there. If there's
Mm-hmm.
not the trust, if there's the absolute, thought that I don't know that this is going to work, nothing's going to work, I'm full of skepticism. Um, there's a fair amount of documentation and these are not studies, but people who say, I'm one of them, who had no reason to think that acupuncture was going to work at a certain time when I very first started it long ago. And I said, wow, this has really done the only thing that anything has done.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's that other place where, is it belief? Is it when we say, I wrote about this recently, when we decide that something is unacceptable. My medical situation is unacceptable. I do not accept this cancer. And
Right.
we really, really like rail against it. I do not accept this. I am not sick. For me, it was, y'all are wrong. I am going to walk. I am fine. And as far as I can tell, there's a way in which, and I use my example simply because it's an easy one to draw from, because it's me and I'm me. But we there it would be easy to just put this as a practice to say, eat 4 or more raw eggs a day and have physical therapy every day and have lots of acupuncture, and you'll grow back nerves at a ridiculous rate when you really
Mm-hmm.
were only supposed to grow, a quarter of an inch a year, an eighth of an inch a year when you're older. I did that, back nerves, but
Yeah.
first I said, I'm fine. I had no reason to know because nobody was offering. They were saying pain management. Logically, I should have said, yeah, I guess I need to do pain management. But what I did was to decide to how do I say this? Justify my belief that I am fine and make it real.
Right.
So,
Well,
so there is a belief, but there's this thing that makes me have to put faith in the process of
right.
making those two things mesh.
Sure. And I think it's also too, it's not, I'm again, I go back to a story now from one of my mentors about a patient that he had that um, was super athletic and mountain climber and mountain biker and outdoors all the time and very physical. And he was he he met him when and this is Bob Duggan, the one of the founders of the Thai Sophia Institute. Um, when Bob met this patient, he had just been in a motorcycle accident and was a quadriplegic, and he was mad. He was mad that he no longer was a physical, that he was no longer could identify by his physicality, or he didn't want to identify with being a quadriplegic,
Yeah.
and he was mad that he didn't die. And um and in working with Bob, it was coming back to that idea that I'm fine, but it was not. It was being able to move smoothly with life as it was then. And so when he first started, he was complaining about bed sores, and he was complaining about all the things he couldn't do, and he was complaining about, everything he could think of to complain about. And in working with the idea, and wait, I might have visual aids. Um, I draw this a lot. This is why I have visual aids. But
Right.
this is a drawing that Bob would put on the board for us as students all the time, which is, this is what life looks like. All this squiggle up here is broken hearts and car accidents and parking tickets and stumping your toe and not having milk for your coffee and whatever else is going on in your life that is annoying or upsetting. It can also be like, the death of someone close to you. I mean, it can be it's all the not quote not good things, right?
The big T traumas and the small T traumas, and the
right.
little tiny
right.
traumas.
Right. And this is life. Welcome to being human. However, this is the work. All that stuff is still going to happen in your life, but it's about magnifying the rest of it so that this takes up less space. And even this could be compressed to where it's just, there is no air in there, right? And so that was his treatment plan with this guy, this guy who was a quadriplegic. That was his treatment plan. And I don't remember the exact time span. It was somewhere within a year or so. He would come in and Bob would say, "So how are the bed sores?" He's like, "I have no idea. I can't feel them. They're not my problem to clean. Somebody else has to do that for me. But let me tell you about what my student said, or let me tell you about this book I'm writing." And so he was still, that to me is as much a miracle as you regrowing nerves, because this man reclaimed his life and was fine given the physical state that he was in. And that transformation is a different type of miracle, in that he could continue to have a interesting, robust, full life given what he was capable of. And none of us have the body that we had when we were 20. Not one of us. And
sure, but when it comes gradually like that, I mean, I would argue that is a similar type of miracle in one way. But I mean, I wasn't there, but that he said, "I don't accept this."
Right.
And he didn't have the ability to die for whatever reason. It was against his ethics. It was, he didn't die. And this wasn't acceptable. So that changes us in some fundamental way. And I'd really like to, because this is beyond mindset. We can say, like, what you were just showing us is very much mindset. Mindset is such an important practice, such a way that we can make ourselves be who we want to be, and really, dive into that, what we want, as opposed to what we don't want, which is what that picture was. But mindset tends to be something that's rigorous and long and needs to be supported. And it's great. It's so worth it. And once you get going, it gets momentum and it is supported. But to start it up is oftentimes people don't quite make it by themselves. They need the support.
Except that there's actually some evidence that people with depression who skydive, after they've jumped out of a plane and made it back to Earth, their depression is gone. And that's a mind shift because of a physical experience. And so, I mean, I agree that it's that, and I know that we're here to talk about those sudden shifts, but I think those sudden shifts can happen in a lot of different ways. Those little miracles that show up,
Yeah, this is the question. Can't say that what happened to me is all that there is for a sudden shift, because it's just that's a thing that I can say is a very clear sudden shift.
Right.
But there's all sorts of things, and here it is. There's no there's no pharmaceuticals to document the use of in this case. So we can document the cases after the fact, but we can't do blind studies in which a medicine was used or a placebo was used. We can't do studies in which a therapy is used and followed, because in all these cases it's sudden. And I would argue that even in the case of acupuncture, there's people come in on their own and say, I'm having this, this crazy symptom, and doctors can't seem to figure it out, and they've been giving me all these drugs and they haven't worked. And suddenly they get some relief. They may even have the issue go away entirely. And so these are, there's a whole spectrum of stuff that is documented because it's people suddenly being sick, suddenly being quadriplegic, suddenly be having no arms, suddenly having no gut, no spleen, no, brain smashed in. These are things that we manage to recover from.
Yep.
I've got a Tommy Thompson is talking about his brother. I watched my brother in his middle 20s after got shot side to side on an upward angle in a bar fight, perforating his bowels in 64 places, nicked a lung, busted his solar plexus, and hit his liver. Bullet exited, I think it was gunshot, and took some of a rib. He was left for dead in a parking lot. And then he says, you can imagine the pain and damage. The VA said he had to stay in the hospital 6 months. He left 6 weeks in AMA. This tough kid a mile with me and slow, but ran. Yeah. So
that's amazing. I'm so happy for your brother.
Yeah. It is just one of those things that is like, wow, what a strong person. And and where is that strength? And do we all have it? And is there a way that we can tell people how to do this, how to harness this, when we can't prepare for the things for getting shot? We can't prepare for getting run over by a truck. We can't prepare for falling off a cliff.
Right.
How do we prepare people for this?
Well, I mean, I think it comes down to resilience. It comes down to resilience and flexibility, to be able to make the shift to, okay, what do I do with this set? It's like playing cards, right? Or let's say playing poker. You deal one, you've got one hand, you play that hand out, and then suddenly the next hand that you get is not anything like what you had last time. How do I work with this one? What are my best plays with this set of cards? And I think it's that piece about resilience. It's that being able to be flexible and dodge, or maybe not even dodge, but to be able to swerve, when something hits, or to say, okay, I only get 5 cards this hand. I don't get 7. So how do I work with that? And I mean, ultimately, I think it's about practicing becoming flexible and becoming curious about how all the ways the story can play out.
Curiosity, such a good one. And flexible, because we're saying no when we are taught that no, we have to focus on the good and on the yes and on but the thing that happens, we can accept it. We can say no. The better choice in this case is to say no, I don't accept this. I'm gonna go past this. And we either struggle hard to get past this, or we suddenly get past this. Tommy Thompson is saying that he had a colostomy bag and was still exercising. So
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I was out. I was noisy. My recovery from that particular injury was noisy. I was out making myself walk, and I was yelling and screaming. I I was a banshee.
Yeah.
Um, and that's but I did it. I didn't say, "Well, I can't walk. I can't do this. I can't." So that I see as a resilience part. Oh, what makes some of us go through this and actually be successful as opposed to other people who, I don't know, are maybe seen as complainers, as are seen as, oh, they're going around, they look like they're on death's door and they're saying, "Oh, my back aches and my,"
Yeah.
and we've seen those people too. And so what keeps them in that place of my back aches and I'm, as opposed to getting through it? And I would dare say
Yeah.
the thought is that I am gonna get through it. I am not this, I am that, and that's a belief.
I think so,
This
but
is
I
just
think it also it's
conjecture.
yeah. I think that's possibly one of the answers that could get them there. I think another answer to that question is I'm not that I am that, but this is not where I want to stay.
Mm,
I wonder what's next. I wonder what options I can actually bring into play here. I wonder if I can walk around the block. I wonder if I can, and you may not you, but maybe someone else in the situation that you were in, they got to where they could walk around the block, but they never really made it more than 2 blocks. But that was their peak, but they had made it 2 blocks, and 2 blocks was better than not walking at all. And so it I think it's
mm.
also what can I make happen? Where do I have agency in this to change how I deal with this? How do I and I also think there's an internal conversation about whether or not someone is pushing against what they don't want or is reaching towards what they do want.
Mm.
Because it's like when you stump your toe and you stump it really badly, so it annoys you for a few hours. Um, when we push against it and attempt to not feel it and kind of like cut our foot off until it shuts up, it's gonna hurt longer, because part of what our body does then is says, okay, we will stop sending resources to that foot. And as opposed to letting ourselves be aware of the fact that our toe hurts and continuing to sort of send attention there, which is why it hurts, is to get your attention. Um, so that then
Yeah.
things like white blood cells and repair work can show up and take care of that. Um, again, it's where it's that resilience to say, yes, my first response is to do this and to not think about it, and I don't want this, 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 but to then to say, and that's a done deal. What else is left on the table? What else can I work with? Where else can I go? And that's where the curiosity piece comes in, of how to figure out what you can pursue, how you can change and move, whether it's just in your mental state about what's going on, or if you can actually affect physical change.
There's yeah, there's a lot there, and I'm realizing as you're speaking that also talking about alignment, about having and how the human is aligned. We have so many, you know this, but it, so many incredible complexes of nerves,
Mhm.
and they're not all in our brain. When we talk about our mind, it's our mind is not necessarily all our brain, but the brain part of our mind has some specific qualities to it. One is that it will say, "Hey, there's something wrong there." Um, in in the case of my leg, when all the nerves died, it said, Mayday, Mayday, there's no leg there. Why it decided to do that in a way, and a lot of people who might view this might know about this, phantom pain. Some people get it, some people don't. Mine was all about wet swords, wet knives that really had a very specific length and gauge, and were going in through the bottom of my foot all the way up through to my knee. Like it was constant. It was and it wasn't real.
Yeah.
And it was the worst pain ever. People talk about Y and Z kind of pain. I've had a lot of pain in my life. That was the worst. I had to say, this isn't real, but it wasn't, because my brain was saying, you got to deal with this. You got to, your leg, it's severed. And then there's the other part of our mind that is going to agree with us no matter what, because it wants us to be happy, including if we're saying, I don't want to do this thing. I don't want to do this thing. Then we'll end up getting a flu, or we'll end up getting something will get in the way, because our mind will say, okay, you don't have to do that thing. It's okay. I got you. And all of a sudden we're like, that's not what I meant. So we, and then what you're talking about, I mean, it has elements of that, but there's a lot from the heart center of the mind. And that's what I'm hearing. And this is what my experience is. At the time, was it my heart? When I was having phantom pain, I was told that, no, it's you. Medical records disappeared. The lawyer said, I don't know, there's nothing wrong here, when the lawyer had said there was something wrong. And my medical record suddenly said that, yeah, this is some weird anomaly that happened to you. The tourniquet was taken off. Everything was normal. And you will never grow back these nerves. And, and humans around me were saying, rah, 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 sue the lawyer, sue the doctor, and I said, no, I'm fine. And it was just like, nope, I am doing this thing. I am walking. I am declaring myself well. And so it's almost like spite in that case. It's very, and spite is a great thing. I love talking about spite, because it's, so many people do get incredible things done in their lives out of spite. And then after a while we say, okay, I need to do this for purpose or something, more than spite. But that was kind of like a spite moment. Like, no, I defy you all.
Oh yeah. Watch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's, and what that does is what the spite does is it shifts your focus against what you're pushing against.
Yeah.
You're no longer pushing against the internal information that you're getting. You're pushing against the other people telling you can't do it. And suddenly that gives you more room to go, to move.
A very sudden shift of focus. And then, there really is focus in the case of that particular thing with my leg, because I then found just an incredible physical therapist, and I worked with an incredible osteopath, and I worked with an incredible acupuncturist. And I didn't go into research mode and get curious and say, gee, what can I do? Let's have lots of raw eggs. That sounds yummy. It was like, you need this.
Yeah.
Do it. Like, okay. And it was exactly what worked. Now, if I had done some other protocol, would it have worked also? Was it all my mind? Or I tend to think that I focused, and that my determination focused me, as opposed to, and then I got curious later once the whole system could calm down.
Right. Right. Well, and so I mean, I think um, there's pieces with determination, and determination almost by its very nature has some curiosity involved in it, in that you are determined to do something and you have to figure out, and which to me has a flavor, figuring something out to me has a flavor of curiosity about it, in that I'm gonna figure out how to make this work. I'm gonna ask, that didn't work, let's try this, that didn't work, let's try that. But having that goal, um, so I think that's part of it. Um, and and Tommy says spite sounds right for my brother also. Um, yeah, anger can be a very positive motivating force, um, as long as it's used for good, for yourself and other people.
Right.
Use your force for good. Um, but the whole piece about the heart, I mean, in the medicine I practice, every mental illness is a heart disturbance. And the Western medicine is starting to catch up with the understanding that the heart has a communication system with the whole body that is different than the one with the brain. I like to refer to the brain as the really high-paid, interesting legal assistant, or legal counsel. Absolutely useful. Everyone should have one. But you can be brain dead and still be alive. You cannot be heart dead and still be alive. It is your heart is the first organ that works and the last one that stops. And
Right.
culturally, all humans have some story and understanding historically about how the heart is the center of who we are. And
Yeah.
medically, it's starting to prove itself through research that, yeah, actually it does have an effect. And this is also why when people have heart transplants, they, suddenly their favorite color changes, or they suddenly like baseball and they never did before, and part of that is because they still are carrying an imprint of the person that had the heart the first
Right.
time. So I think, and the heart is what stamps us with who we are. And without wading too deeply into the theory behind it, it sends that message through the blood to the rest of the body that this is who I am, this is what I do. And so your heart was saying, this is who I am, this is what I'm capable of.
Yeah.
And I think that there are people, and I think also it has to do with the influences we've had in our lives. Maybe it's how we were raised, or maybe it's not how we were raised, but how we had that one teacher, or that one friend's parent, or that one friend, or that person that said the one thing to you on the train that time that just changed your entire opinion of yourself.
Positive or negative, what made that possible for you?
Right. And what and if it was negative, what triggered that spite response of, oh yeah, watch, let me show you what I can do. And I think that is what allows for that resilience and that flexibility. It's the people that, for whatever reason, have not been given the key to get out of that box, is where some of that inability to flex comes from, I would guess.
Right.
We're pontificating at this moment.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. You're talking about the high-paid legal assistant that is our brain, and the VIP that is our heart. And I would say that also our gut, our intuition, that part of us is like the bodyguard, and confidant, but not and really, really important. And so I wonder, partially, if in the case of someone who doesn't have access to the key, is it that they didn't have access to that part of them, to their intuition, or was their intuition, was it shut off? Was it hypervigilant in a way that didn't do its job? that whole integration of who we are, that's just inherent in us, whether we can do things to fight it, to ignore it, to sweep things under the rug, just like we can wear different clothes. We can
Mm-hmm.
choose this, and we do.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the biggest examples of our heart and the heart energy and the healing energy of the heart and the expansive energy of the heart is how much people, and this is documented, how much people all praying for a thing
Yes. Mm-hmm.
cause the thing to happen, because
Yep.
that's right there in our heart.
Yep. There
So
was
it's
actually
connective
yeah.
energy.
Mm-hmm.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Well, and there
Sorry.
was no. Sorry to interrupt. There was a study. I can't remember again. Can't remember where it is right now. I can look it up if people are really curious. Um, where they brought in a group of monks to pray for a white tiger in a zoo who who was ill, and they did the brainwave thing with the monks, and they did. But the important piece of this story is that the tiger, which the veterinarians had done everything they could do, the tiger got better. And they weren't laying
Yeah.
hands on. They weren't even laying hands on this animal. They were like sitting outside his cage. Some of them were sitting outside his cage. Some of them were actually back, in their monastery, praying, or not praying, but meditating, um,
Yeah.
for the health of this tiger, and it and it got better, and it lived longer. And
This
so there is
yeah.
definitely something that there are things that, um, I mean, back to the idea back to the idea of using that force for good. There's the whole goat experiment that the military did at one point, I think in the 70s, where they were trying to influence these goats by focusing on them in the same way that the monks focused on the tiger. Um, but part of me says, they were thinking about it as a military tool, and so they weren't necessarily planning to use the force for good. And so I'm wondering if that didn't influence some of the outcome of their study.
Right. Yeah. And that's where I think the limit to us using anger and spite, how that comes up, because it has a limited usefulness,
Mhm.
but it can get us past it's
Yeah.
like using a sledgehammer to open a door. I mean, it
Right.
works. It,
Yes.
but eventually, when you can just calm down and focus, you might be able to figure out that, oh, there's a key. And if you just are trusting, you might just go and try the doorknob, and hey, it works. Yeah. And that's
Right.
where the different parts of us come in. I'm thinking about the monks, though, and that, yeah, as you said, there's literally love. There's
Mhm.
literally intention to do, uh, let's call it good, to
Mhm.
for the betterment of something else.
Right.
Whereas the military was just trying to get a thing done, and it was kind of all brain.
Right. Well, and I think too, though, that the other thing, and like you said, we'll call it good. Um, it's also about, um, not the good that we want, the good that benefits the target person or event or culture or whatever.
Yeah.
It's perhaps pray, people praying for someone who is ill to find peace, or to find acceptance in where their situation, or whatever the thing is. That might be the person passing away. Their ability to find that ease might actually be letting go of this lifetime. Um, it's not for us to decide or impose on somebody else what that
Yeah.
what that good is. Some people may just be done. Some people also may just really need the extra energy and support to put to stay longer, to fight the good fight, to heal.
That's the power of that's the power of compassion, and
Right.
that's how we can lend love, compassion, hope,
Hmm.
in as the good intentions and the heart actually focusing on creating a thing, creating an
Yeah.
action, creating an occurrence. If we're on our own, again, busting past that door, first, I'd say that happened to me, had happened to
Hmm.
Tommy Thompson's brother,
Hmm.
where there's no you're not feeling compassion around,
Right.
you're feeling, a lot of other stuff, and like you said before, we are aligned to this isn't me. So but we have to bust through to that,
Hmm.
and then we become our own love and our own
Yeah.
compassion
Hmm.
until the rest of it catches up, if ever it does. There are people who do tremendous things on their own. There are people right here on social media who are saying, here's my cancer journey. And everybody is saying, we believe in you. We love it.
Hmm.
You got this. And more, like really showing love. And how much does that
Yeah.
help us heal?
Hmm. Oh, I mean, I think it's exponential, really. Um, and we still have the choice, right, of whether or not we want to fight that fight or not. Um,
Yeah.
I
Do
think,
we
I think,
do we
and
believe
I
it?
think, well, and even when it comes to the point of death, I mean, um, unless it's a sudden, tragic, traumatic death. I think about my dad who had a brain tumor, but he actually fell in the hospital and broke his neck, and he was in ICU for for several weeks while everybody came, and
Yeah.
he got to say what he needed to say to everybody. But he didn't. He was ready to go, and he said as much. But he waited to remove that piece of will, that piece of not spite, but that piece of force that was keeping him there. He didn't relax it until my mother told him it was okay to go. And then 20 minutes later, he was gone.
Yes.
And
That's that's the thing that I think where the compassion and the heart comes in from someone else
mhm, yep,
in that case. Letting people go. It's their choice to go, right? I
sure,
mean,
sure,
it's never not it's
yeah,
never
we
our
can't make
decision.
them
It's
stay.
always
Yeah,
no. Um,
but they can, or me on my on my deathbed can have. I have some ability, maybe not enough, maybe plenty,
yeah,
to say I'm not going until X, Y, and Z people are okay with it, or who say that or can handle it, or somebody comes in that I know can help support them when I'm gone, or there's plenty of
right.
stories of people waiting until their loved ones are taken care of, or etc. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, I
I,
mean it's a. I mean, what we're talking about is I mean, it's the thing that animates us, right? It's the thing that makes us not rocks, you know, um, not tree stumps. It's the thing that allows us to be in community with ourselves and with other people. It's the thing that it's the intangible piece that can't be given a diagnosis. Um, it just needs to. It's. I'm losing words. Um, it's more organic. It can either be watered or not watered to grow. Um, but it can't be quantified. And I think when going back to your original question about how do we study this? How do we study these sudden things? I mean, the most data will be gleaned in retrospect, right? The most data will be collected by, if say you had been keeping track of all of your medical tests and in the number of steps you could walk and how that increased over time, and then that data could have been reviewed in retrospect. I'm not sure how we study it moving forward, like going from the point of it not happening to after it happens, because that becomes more of a, well, here's the other thing about it, just if I pull back far enough, is who wants to know why a miracle happens? You can't make a miracle. You can't, and there's something therapeutic for everybody who hears about a miracle.
It's much lovelier.
Right. So it reminds us that we will never know everything about what it means to be human. And if we do, perhaps we'll just disappear in a puff of white smoke. We'll be done. we will have learned what we needed to learn. I mean, I almost don't want to, I want to know about these stories. I want to aggregate them somewhere because they may inspire other people. They may inspire somebody who has a situation similar to you, or, may inspire a gunshot victim, the story of Tommy's brother.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily want to know why. Because here's the thing, the why it happened for you is not going to be the why it happened for another person who may have exactly the same clinical write-up.
That's very much the crux of it. It's not sponsored by a pharmaceutical company, and so it's not following the path of a certain drug, or therapeutic method or whatever. It's
right. An intervention of some sort.
Right. I love the idea of the poof of smoke, and we vanish when we've satisfied all of our reasons. I was realizing as you were talking how much I've been with other people on their deathbeds and provided the whatever allowed them to pass.
Mm-hmm.
I've been on my deathbed. I would have thought I wanted to go. My heart stopped. I did not go. I thought to myself, this is disappointing. It's nice and peaceful here. I like it. And I mean, seriously. And like, no, you got this. This is not your time. Was that my own heart? There was no, I will say there's no big, bearded or unbearded person that came to me, but there was this feeling of being held. And was that the universal energy? Was that the source? Was that the God? Was that my heart? Was I holding myself? My heart had stopped. So, what's going on there? And that's unique to every one of us.
Mm-hmm.
Mine was very short. I came back. Obviously I'm here, it's water under the bridge. But if for each of us, there's something happening there. And when, to kind of come back to what we were talking about, presence, what's present to each of us. And what is present to us might be the practitioner that we're with as well as us, or it may be just us, or it may be us and our family. It might be us and our and our cat that we want to stay alive for. It may be us and our child. It may be us and our purpose that
Right.
we feel strongly that we're still a part of, but it's our presence and what we're present with. I think that might be the unifying factor. What are we present with?
Yeah.
At the time of healing, at the time of transformation, at the time of decision.
Right. Well, and I think it's also, it's that, but I think to some degree, and this is a piece of that, is what is our self-definition?
Yeah.
It's why, I mean, the American culture, and we've been infecting the rest of the world with it to a certain degree, is we're defined by our jobs. Where, you stand at a party with a bunch of people that you don't know, and the first question anybody asks after "What's your name?" is
What do you
"What do you
do?"
do?" Right. And how, I mean, I was struck years ago, when I was in college and I was in Europe, and how many number of people said to me, "We work to live. You Americans live to work." And then years later, somebody showed me statistics of how many more people who were completely defined by their job died shortly after retiring, because suddenly their heart did not have any more words for what they were. Who am I if I'm not this job? Who am I if I am not this person's parent? Who am I if I am not this person's partner? Who am I if I am not X, Y, or Z? And I think part of any meditation practice, spiritual practice, and even to some degree religious practice is, who am I? What am I present to when it's just me, not even in the room, in any space, with my eyes closed? What is your self-definition, Dr. Janice and Dr. Lydia? Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that is interesting.
How many hours do you have? I mean, let me answer. Let me give a drop of that answer. Before I went into acupuncture school, or actually I was in acupuncture school, but before I went into clinic, one of the exercises that they had our class do was to ask everybody we knew what they were aware of by its presence or its absence when we were in the room. It's a really enlightening exercise. I highly recommend it. It also can be extremely harsh, and you can hear some really rough stuff from people. All of that is to say, it was to craft what they called our promise in being, so that we knew what we were taking into the treatment room, regardless of if we were happy, sad, sick, tired, whatever. My promise in being is forthrightness, flexibility, and belonging. Yes, all of those good, positive versions of those words, but also all of the others. When I am not flexible, I am immovable. When I do not believe you belong, which I can count on one hand of the people that I think I've ever made that decision about, we could be in a room with 600 people and you could be on the other side of the room and know that I didn't think you should be there. So to some degree, that's by reflection and by understanding the resonance within myself with those words. That's who I am, somehow mixed up with a really curious 8-year-old. That would be my that would be my answer anyway.
Yeah. I'm aware of love, healing, and infinite possibility. I'm very aware of resilience, but it makes me not feel as though I'm brave, because I just don't believe, I don't have a place of fear in me very much at all. It's like fear is a distant past that I've gone through. And this lifetime has just been about patience and gratitude. For me, I feel love, and for me that comes a lot in creativity. I feel like creative energy is healing energy, is love, but I have a different relationship, I think, than some people do with creativity. So it's just an inherent part of me. So I don't know if that resonates with anybody, but the rest of it is just infinite possibility. If I don't question, that infinite possibility is still there.
Yeah. Well, part of that too, I would imagine, as you say, fear being an ancient history, part of that had to do with your near-death experience. Like, you walked up to the biggest, scariest thing in the world, and then like, okay, I'll be back. I'll see you later.
Yeah. Yeah.
So after that, I mean, what is there besides infinite possibility and love, quite frankly?
There's still it's still pretty easy, though, to get caught in this body,
Yeah.
and to be, because that wasn't my first rodeo, and it wasn't my last.
Right.
So I had a little thought for a while, belief that every 5 years I would have some trauma. I finally said, "Hey,
Ooh.
you are attached to struggling, and you are attached to big S struggling.
Yeah.
Let that go." And there wasn't a lot of fear of it, because but there was a dislike of it. And that
Yeah.
dislike wasn't enough to change the belief. But there was a lot of, I really had to overcome that. Doesn't mean that nothing else will happen in life, but I can be infinite, and I can be infinitely, quote unquote, good. I can be infinitely powerful. I can be infinite in any way that I want to, without struggling.
Right.
Struggling isn't part of the equation. It's actually not part of the equation. And
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
that's just
Okay.
everything. That's the crux of that particular lesson, is that the struggle is not part of the growth.
Right. Well, and all I was going to say is, and you know, you have the right to wear comfortable shoes as you walk that road. You have the right to not be. I think about how many, in my 20s, when I would, put on heels, and every wonderful event I went to, part of my brain would be concentrating how my feet hurt. I think of it in terms of, if I may be walking into a pothole or a muddy place, or or through a fire, but I deserve to wear comfortable shoes on that road while I'm there.
Yeah, well,
And
like you said earlier about what your brain is doing, if your feet hurt, it's because your brain is telling you there's something wrong.
right, 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 right. But there's unnecessary struggle and suffering, is unnecessary. I mean, there's a portion of it that's
That's
unnecessary. There's some stuff that will show up regardless whether you want it to or not, right? But you can choose some of that, and why make it worse for yourself? But yeah,
right. So we've gotten quite far off, but still talked about the general subject of, why is well, the question really wasn't why are these studies incomplete. We have said, hey, this is why they don't show everything. They don't.
right.
But questioning what the theories are, because theories are out there in science, and theories are just in our own heads. We each carry around theories, and those theories influence our beliefs. And so I would say that this conversation has taken a really nice and interesting trajectory about what those beliefs are in each of us, including in our audience, and how they shape who we are, how they shape how we heal, how they shape how, when I say how we are, it's like, our sense of being, our sense of belonging, our sense of everything that we have.
Yeah.
As
And how we come to tell stories about our experience that are big enough to live in, that don't cause that unnecessary suffering, regardless of what we're up against, I think is also an important piece.
Yeah. Doesn't make the bills or the pundits or anything else go away,
Right.
but it does change our relationship to them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. We have gone on for over an hour, so we should let our audience who are still hanging in there, thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you're here live, we very much appreciate you. And if you were on Team Replay, we also very much appreciate you. Conversations, the nice thing about this is that we can keep having them. So if you have thoughts, put them in the comments, even if you're on Team Replay, and you're welcome to put hashtag Team Replay. So thank you. And thank you, everybody. If you like this, please hit like, and as always, if you haven't done it already, please gently push the subscribe button. We appreciate you. Have an amazing week, and we'll see you next time on the Tuesday Telecast.
Bye. Thanks.